This meeting is being recorded. Accordingly, these other participants may be able to hear you, and anything you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All participants should keep their phones and microphones muted unless recognized by me. Each vote taken in this meeting will be a roll call vote. It's a public hearing and public comment is permitted. I will call on each speaker to address the working group. If you wish to address the group, please click on the raised hand icon or ask to speak. Members of the community may speak if called upon. They're limited to 3 minutes each. So that's that. So this is actually a full meeting of the LSC, even though everybody isn't here. And the purpose is to, first of all, based on late information I have from Ryan, to decide if we want to even have a subcommittee or if we should do this in the main committee. And then secondarily, if we are doing a subcommittee, sort of to build a roadmap of what it is we want to accomplish in a timeline so we can do it. So the other issue is quorum wise, they're saying that we shouldn't have 5 members, we should have 4, unless we can get a 12th member onto the LSC, which I tried to do last week, but I couldn't, the person I asked wouldn't do it because they don't want to do Zoom meetings. So right now we'd have to decide if we're going to do, we could do 5 members and an alternate, or maybe somebody in the room doesn't really want to do it, or we just revert it back and do it as the full board. So I'd love people's opinion on that if I can get it.
So you said that Ryan recommended?
He recommends that we don't make a subcommittee. You know, that was what Barney had suggested, so we went with it. But he recommends that we handle this as a full committee.
Did Brian explain why?
No. I just asked about how many people on a subcommittee. And it wasn't in verbal, it was in email, so I can send it to you. It just says, I recommend the full board.
Did it sound like a strongly recommend or a?
It was in red, I don't know what that means. And I kind of get it both ways. No. You know, on one hand, if you do it in a quote unquote more intimate group like we have here, we might get things done more quickly and efficiently and be able to take stakeholder input more, again, intimately, I don't have a better word, more personally than standing in front of 11 people. On the other hand, we might be better off doing it as a big group and just, you know, pump it out. So I'd love to hear what you guys think.
I guess I'll go first then. I mean, my 2 cents would just be, if it feels like based on the conflicting directions, that this should be something that Ryan and the select board should determine what their recommendation is, and we should follow that guidance. I'd probably feel more comfortable deferring to them versus choosing based on kind of the way it's gotten here.
Okay, the only issue with that is it's gonna, you know, we could terminate this meeting, but then we have to wait until Ryan and the select board. I mean, I can find the email from him, but it's not that compelling. I think it just says his recommendation. So we could do that. It just delays it longer. On the other hand, I don't think there's a lot of real activity going on there, that it's not like they're going to miss their crop or something, right? There's no urgency. Sorry, I'm just getting, I don't look at emails a lot on my phone. I was just gonna try to quote you guys what he said exactly. But anyway, so your opinion is let them decide?
Well, sort of. I think the base case is that Barney's recommendation is kind of on behalf of the select board, right? And so I wouldn't want to go against that unless it comes back that the select board agrees that we are not going to go in the direction that was advised to us from the select board. So I think that's if Ryan has a rationale, maybe that's for him to talk through with Barney and the rest of the select board, and then for the course to change based on that. Otherwise, I'd probably default to the expectation being that there's a subcommittee that's tasked as was voted on.
Okay, if you guys want, I'll read you what I wrote to him when he wrote back. What if all 6 potential LSC members firmly want to be on the subcommittee? I can't reduce the subcommittee. I think the best option would be manage the issue in the full purview of the committee, in the case that we had 6. I believe 6 members are passionate about our conservation lands and no one want to be, they use the term evicted. We had to evict. There's a prior email from the town clerk that said, you have to evict someone. And that no one want to be evicted, as you said. What a terrible word. So I'm actually responding to the town clerk, not to Ryan. And I'll get to what he said in a minute. Barney had suggested a small group was better, but it may be more efficient to have the full quorum address the issues. And then Ryan says, I don't think I'm alone in being slightly confused about the subcommittee. If the LSC, and you can hear me fine, right?
I can, yeah.
If the LSC makes a subcommittee, I actually think the CONSCOM needs to appoint them, as the CONSCOM is the parent organization. But assuming that is not the case, the LSC should vote a specific charter for their committee with the membership they want. A person cannot make a subcommittee. A committee must make a subcommittee. So it should be clear how many people will be participating prior to appointing them. And if the LSC said the subcommittee should be 3, 5, or 6, that's how many spots you have. And the appointment of those persons onto the subcommittee should be done by the LSC in an open session by vote, which is what we could all do tonight, right? Because we're a quorum of the LSC. And then he says, I think having the full LSC make as many decisions as possible is best, but that's just a recommendation. So he's not saying no subcommittee, but I think he's aiming us in that direction. So I'd love other people's input if they have an opinion of.
Well, I think that's several thoughts on this. I think, first of all, if we're going to be inviting and asking stakeholders to come talk to us in full committee mode, that's not very efficient. I don't think that would work very well. But secondly, if for some reason, Ryan, the select board feels strongly about it being, LSC, then it should be dedicated meetings just to Woodward. Because, amongst anything else, I think the LSC needs to get past this so we can focus on, focus on other things. And I do think, I know you put down on the agenda perhaps 2 or 3 additional meetings. I don't think that's going to do it. I really think, by the time you coordinate all the stakeholders and you're going to have more than 2 or 3 meetings, they might be short, say only AgCom is going to come and talk to us. So maybe that's a half hour or something like that. But I just don't think you're going to get it done in 2 or 3 meetings. And so that, to me, argues for a smaller subcommittee that can have a little more flexibility in scheduling than trying to get 12 people together.
So the other thing that Barney has said is that we have to be unanimous in all of our decisions as a subcommittee to submit it back to the LSC. And I don't think that would be true necessarily for the whole board, right? We don't have to be unanimous.
No, I don't think you have to be unanimous. I mean, like any other collegiate town board, we work to that. People make compromises. But yeah, at the end of the day, half of us might say X and half of us might say Y. And that would be too bad for the LSE.
Right. I mean, I don't think any vote by the subcommittee is binding in any fashion. I mean, it's just, the result is a recommendation back to the LSC and a reason for the recommendation.
So that's just, I mean, I don't really care either way, but in terms of, you know, if it's subcommittee or full committee, that's one reason why full committee saves some wasted time. On the other hand, you're wasting the time of the full committee by making them attend every, you know, I think to do that, if Alex is right, we'd have to have 2 LSC meetings a month. One would be a special dedicated to the Woodward property. And it would take months, right?
I think it might take months anyway.
Right.
And I think that the, some of the people probably didn't want to sign up for a subcommittee.
Mhm.
Because they didn't really know where that was gonna go, and yet they might want to be involved in the process more than just hearing what we all thought and come back and go, well, we came down to 2 things, A and B.
Yeah,
So they didn't get to hear C, D, and E. So, I mean, I guess if I was gonna vote, I would say I prefer to just work with the whole committee.
Yeah, it'd be like leaving them out if we didn't, you know, a decision.
well, in a way, we're not, because we would propose something to them, and again, and I don't know if we can jump, maybe it's not right to, but if we jumped ahead and sort of envision what was gonna happen, what the results are, I don't see this as a really big deal. We're not gonna turn the license on its head. You know, we have a license. We're gonna take in the stakeholders and we're gonna listen to the abutters. And I'm not sure it's really substantially gonna change things. And if that's the case, if a subcommittee came back with a report to the LSC, that's fine. But if you guys think it's really substantially gonna change things, then maybe we need to do it as a whole committee.
Well, I think so. There different elements, right? We have the element of the stakeholders, some or most of whom, for whatever reason, feel they didn't get heard. So we got that process issue for which this is going to be, you're gonna get heard.
Yeah.
You're being heard. And then there's separate and apart from that is, you use the word narrow, and I'm not so sure it's narrow. I went to look at the property as I look at it. I think there's been a substantial deterioration since the town acquired it. And I think we really need to look very closely at the management plan. Not that there really is one.
We don't have it yet.
Yeah, but the management plan, and determine whether it's adequate, and then say to the license holder, look, you really need to do more. And the license holder is, I'm not up for that. Or alternatively, and I'm just throwing out an example here, is we may say, okay, well, the license holder does this, but we need to supplement that with something else.
So for example, if they said, we're supposed to remove invasives, but this is an overburden for us.
Yeah, I mean, if you could take the example of the bittersweet along the edges taking over the trees, that's. So I'm just saying there's a lot here to look at, and I think it's hard in the context of full committee meetings, but Shane has a point. A lot of people, they say, well, wait, What are you talking about? We didn't think you were gonna go talk about those things.
Yeah, and we've been at this for a few months now with these farmers and some of the townspeople. It's getting rather ridiculous, we gotta move on here before long. So.
And you were out there with me when they were trying to remove the swallow ward. And I went out and walked around and I'm like, holy shit, you guys need like 50 people to get rid of all this stuff. You can't, a bunch of people with trash bags is not gonna do this. And in some areas, there'd be a spot besides this table densely with swallow wart and mixed with poison ivy protecting it. So there's no way I'm gonna dive into the poison ivy and pull out the swallow wart, right?
Well, we were over there, we were working and we didn't see any, so it's. It'll get done eventually, the one where they work on it, if they can get to the field. So I'll stay committee and let's, all rolling on this and take care of these farmers and townspeople. See if we can. On our way here.
So what do you think, Chris? I haven't heard much from you.
I feel like we've got a lot of feedback, negative feedback, that we haven't really addressed. And when we try to address it in a full committee meeting, the discussion gets out of hand. And I think a small group reflecting on the process, reflecting on the decisions we made and how we made them, would produce recommendations, if nothing else, for the future. So we don't repeat mistakes that we've made in the past. And that could be, I mean, even at the select board meeting and Amanda got up, Andrew's wife,
Yeah.
said, what's the process for this? All right,
No answer.
so that's an example. Well, we don't have a process, right? So my envision, like a recommendation from the committee could be, if there's a proposal to change land use, then we have a process, right? That was one piece of feedback we got during the whole thing, right? So we've gotten pieces of feedback all along the way that we didn't address. Quite a bit of feedback. And, I've brought up before in these meetings, like the documents, we show up, we talk about documents and, what documents? I mean, as a townsperson being at CONSCOM meetings and having documents pulled up on Zoom, it's very frustrating. Like, I get to, you have to read really fast, or you don't have access to those documents before the meeting starts, or during the meeting, or after the meeting.
But we fixed that now.
Well, I don't know that we fixed it, right?
I literally took this license, it's 34 pages, and I had to scan each page in, which I did, and it's on the town website. And I brought you guys copies, but it's on the town website.
Right.
So
But
everybody
that's not a
finally can
great
see it.
process, right? That was.
I didn't enjoy it.
No, that's not a great process, right? So that may be another example of something that the small subcommittee could recommend to the board, going forward. This is what we want to do, right?
But that's not what this subcommittee is. This
Well,
subcommittee is to.
I understand. So that's the other thing is scope, right?
and
So
that's-
if we're just gonna rewrite the license agreement, I don't know that we need a subcommittee, but if we wanna pause, take the input that we've received, which is abundant, and have a small group methodically go through that, as opposed to the committee where we get 5 minutes to talk about it. I think that would be a better approach. So to me, a small subcommittee is better.
Okay,
If the scope is to, if we don't limit the scope to just rewriting the
we
license.
have to right now. That's what we voted on. The vote was to review the license and the supporting documents. And what you're saying, and Adam, I hope you'll chime in when he's done, but Adam actually wrote a great document, which I didn't share because it was just to me, but in the future, at least, what's the process, like you're saying? If we're gonna do, and it might not just be, well, I don't think it's specific to a land use change. It's, how do we listen? And, well, do you wanna, well, I don't know if you're done, but when you're done, maybe if you could address what you had to say, I think that's all really important.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think it was, I think it pertains whether, regardless of the scope of our charter, as was decided, I guess, by the subcommittee vote or by the committee vote. I mean, I proposed that what I had proposed when Brian asked for, thoughts on structuring the agenda was just trying to outline this process the same way I felt like the process should have unfolded initially. That you start with, number one, a thorough review and in a real kind of discussion of what the proposed use changes are. So that it's unambiguous, so it's documented, right? So it's not vague and well understood by everybody. And then you start identifying, okay, what are the likely or anticipated interested parties and abutters and users, current, past, future, other stakeholders that are included, and collecting that input, and then going forward to start reviewing the considered use with and getting the input from all of those stakeholders. So I think that the objective, whether it's a subcommittee here or whether it was the full committee originally or now going forward, is still the same. The objective is to really understand how the community is impacted by whatever kind of land use changes, and then subsequently to start to use that as in the evaluation process. So I think that, right now, and Alex kind of hit on it, made me think about what's the correct scope overall, but I don't think that the outcome should be for us language is important. I don't think that the outcome is decisions or anything like that. I think of the job as just fact finding and laying out the facts and data. It's not our opinions or recommendations. It's just a summary of here's the facts and data, right? The feedback that's been collected, the concerns of stakeholders, the input from the community, the different pain points that have or haven't been addressed. And if we bring that back, then ultimately we can make, the best decision. Whatever party can make the best decision, whether that's the full committee, whether that's Conscom or the select board. I think I see it as a fact-finding kind of group and organizing. I don't know, but I'm new to the subcommittee thing, so I kind of defer to what Alex was guiding more.
So I think that's a different subcommittee. I mean, a very valuable one, or I don't even have to be a subcommittee or within the committee, to make those, to take what you said. And by the way, Alex has said things like that. And I would even add, the Woodwards who abut that land. So if you're, coming in from Maple Street, they have the house that still owns part of the field. They just woke up to this whole thing. And, Alex would agree that for Conscom, we send out, we send out certified mail notices of what we're doing. And I think that for something like this, abutters should have got a notice that there was a hearing. Because people are learning almost a year later.
Yeah.
What's going on. It's crazy, right? And you can say, shame on you, you didn't check the town website every day, but people don't. So I think
I mean you can't put a shed in your backyard without, sending out 100 notices. So
you can if it's below 10 by 8. But
There's only three.
Huh?
There's only three abutters.
But well, that's not really true.
Yeah, it is.
No, there must be
Oh, four, but it's the same family.
People across Maple Street.
So,
But it's
yeah,
just
no.
abutters and next to abutters, perhaps.
Right, but it's the question right now about the scope is, yeah, the full committee voted to review that support document. When I looked, I mean, and I did ask this at meetings, that support document is the meat of the contract. So when you're talking about reviewing that, you're talking about reviewing the contract. Now, I totally agree. We're not talking about alternatives and what might happen if this, contract doesn't go forward for whatever reason. I totally agree that we don't want to talk about that right now. But we do want to talk about and make fact findings about the substance of the contract and not only how it affects, the interested parties, but how does that help in the management of the property itself?
Well, I'm gonna butt in here for a second,
Sure.
okay, because I know the property very well.
Mhm.
All right, so you said when we first bought it, I actually had
You
the
hear?
ag license,
Can you hear?
okay?
Yeah, I can.
So at that time, the field was lush. It had some invasive rose plants, which I was removing them because that was part of my ag.
So I don't think you said you had the lease for how many years with
I had the license,
but from the owners,
no, from the town.
but before that,
Yeah, but that's not part of it.
well, but it's part of the history.
Okay,
No, yeah, but not, so Judy, nobody's,
no.
nobody's criticizing.
no,
And in fact, what I was trying to say was that since then, I think just by what I saw, there's been a marked deterioration.
I know, but I want to answer
Yeah.
that, okay, and it's only my belief, okay,
Mhm.
or observations. But
Can you pass that to Shane?
in 2022,
That's.
we did not own the land.
I wasn't
It had
sure.
not been transferred. I mean, we owned part of it, but the last part has not been transferred,
Six signatures.
all right? Sylvia called me and said, I just realized you're on land stewardship committee and that's a conflict of interest. So, you can't have the ag license. So either I will remove you or you can remove yourself. Right? And at that point, 1 week went by and our farm was there with sheep. All right, so for those of you who may not be farmers, things are very different when you take a field that just has a little beginning of invasive plants in a few areas and you mow it. Okay, when you mow it, you spread the seeds of the invasive plants everywhere, okay? So it's hard to say one method is better than another because when you mow, it looks neat. And that would be the directive of some people wanting it to look neat. But other people would say that's not how you manage invasive plants. You remove them as a spot plant. And then the last couple of years, we've had drought. Looks like hell out there. But part of that is drought, or almost all of that is drought, so nothing is growing. So,
These are just,
but I'm just telling you that these are things that we all have to know. You can't be on land stewardship if you're not focusing on best management practices of land management.
we don't have land management on this contract yet.
Right.
So that's all.
But that's not true. On that contract, we have two of the most important people in the area. One focused on native plants and native plant growing, native plant restoration, and native plant knowledge. And the other part on that committee, on the Grow Native board, is Parterre, okay, which is a what do you call it? A consulting firm who specializes in restoration, invasive removal, and they have a pesticide license. Okay, these are two of the most important people in at least Eastern Massachusetts. We should be honored that Grow Native even was willing to show interest in this project. I mean, the field is a old agricultural field with mostly non-native grasses. It's gonna be a hard restoration. They knew that when they looked. But in the midsummer of 2022, when I was there in the beginning to look at the invasive removal, there were 8 different species of goldenrod. There were 4 or 5 different species of asters. There was Joe Pieweed. Okay, there was a whole bunch of other really wonderful native plants. That's what we were talking about when we talk about seed bank. So I think that that element has not really been focused on heavily. It's mostly been focused on complaints. And I think it's time to look at what's actually valuable for the land, not just the people around it.
But I think what Alex is saying, I mean, and he's been a lawyer, so he's had to deal with all this stuff. You can have great people sign a contract, but if the contract isn't good, it's not all really gonna happen. So I, for example, thought they would already been doing more to remove the invasives than they've done. We haven't seen their whole plan yet, and there probably is work to do in this support document too. Isn't that what you're saying? We need a land management plan.
Yeah, I mean, so I hear you. I hear you, Jay. But it, as I sit here and, I come to this not having been involved. As I look at the document, I can't tell what they're proposing to do, when they're proposing to do it, and how they're gonna do it. I just look at, I can say, I can talk and look about general objectives and say, yeah, those sound good,
But
but,
it isn't our role to
But-
dictate what they do and
But
when.
you know what he's
well,
saying?
absolutely.
These 2 documents were the advertised documents to bid on the project. They're not a response by any applicant. Right? So this is what we proposed, advertised, and then, we get 4? We get 4
Or
vendors, potential licensees came in and they said, we would do this or we would do that or whatever. So we don't actually have the input of, I don't think we ever had the input of any 4 of the people of exactly what their management plan would have been.
because we gave them what we wanted them to do, remove invasives and restore natives. And collect the seeds and some of the small plants. So it was very simple, and I may be the only one here, but these are knowledgeable people. And this year has been horrible weather-wise, all right? So we don't know even if, and I'm gonna grasp at straws here, but they were awarded the license, and I can't remember the month, May, I think, all right? And by May, we were all being besieged by concerns, okay? And I don't know about you, but I'm positive that Grow Natives learned a little bit about that, and they might actually go, I'm just not quite sure, where this is going, and I don't know, I've not talked to them about that.
And if they don't know, they should be told and invited
Well, they're told now,
to appear.
they're aware.
But so this is another thing, because again, I get input from you guys, but individually, and it's not all shared. Alex's point was, why aren't the stakeholders at this meeting? And my reasoning was sort of, because this is just gonna be a hot mess, like, we're just trying to figure it out. And if we had people here wanna know what's going on, or the licensee here, I mean, if I were them, I would run away and, if we had a room right now full of angry abutters or stakeholders, it's not gonna help us right now to figure out the process we wanna use to move forward. Right? So I think, right now, we have sort of, I think, a bunch of different things. One is, and I'll make it the Adam camp, that we need a process with a capital P, that we can deal with these things in the future. We have Alex saying, I'm sorry I arrived late, but here's this thing, and I don't really know what they're gonna do. We don't know what they're gonna do. We haven't seen their plan. And maybe an action item is to ask for their plan. And then we have the debate of, do we do this intimately in the small group, which, frankly, looking at us together, I know you're not in the room, but, if somebody wanted to come and make a compassion plea, we're all listening. And I think it's harder for 11 people to listen, versus, do we need to do this with the community at large, LSC at large, and make decisions? So got a bunch of different things going on here.
I think it's a combination of those two things.
Which two?
The going forward, whatever our process is.
Yeah.
And I think it requires a look back on what we did. And if there are things that we can rectify from that, then we can recommend that to the board. But, we have signed commitments right now. So, that's the difficulty, right? So I think that.
And we're not chartered to look back right now. We're just chartered
Well,
to.
Right. So
Review what we have.
it is a look back, like, here's the document.
Okay,
And what was it supposed to look like? And that requires you to look back at what it was supposed to look like. Right? So there is an element. I mean, if we're just going to line edit the license agreement, I don't think we need a subcommittee for that. But if we want to do a comprehensive analysis of the input we received and the process steps that we used, and come up with future recommendations to do it better and rectify mistakes we made in the past, I think that's a great job for a subcommittee. So
but
it's
that might
really
not
the
be the
scope.
Woodward subcommittee, that might be the
Well,
moving forward better
I
subcommittee.
mean, I think
The
some
Adams
of
subcommittee.
some of those things that we find may carry over to other things that we did, but I think the subcommittee would just have to focus on sort of the work we do. Yeah, but I mean, there may be process steps that we missed and could do better on that would have affected, say, phosphon, right? But that's not the focus of the subcommittee.
Okay, so the other bit of history that you're missing and Alex is missing is LSC inherited this. The CONSCOM went out, just to make the history clear. The CONSCOM went out and looked at the Woodward property and saw the value of the 3 different kinds of milkweed that were growing in the lower part of the field. And I was one of the people who went out with them and staked off the lower part of the field and said, no sheep in this lower part of the field. And Andrew was not happy. He stood there, I remember, with his arms folded, and he said, you're taking the best part of the field away from me. Well, we did. And what we didn't do was put in writing, you don't get, for your dollar, you don't get the bottom, whatever, acre of the field. And here's the parallel line we're drawing, and you can't go beneath it. Sign here. We didn't do that. We thought it was sort of a gentleman farmer's agreement, and we told him he couldn't use it. And he used it, and he mowed it, and he wiped out all of the materials we were trying to keep there. So the CONSCOM, not LSC, made the decision of, oh, well, maybe we should consider different uses of this field. And so you can do a look back. It isn't really the fault of LSC, some of this. They inherited it
I'd
from
say it was.
CONSCOM.
Right.
But I mean,
That's sort of
Because you have to
assuming
not
the
have-
conclusions, right? I mean, it's trying to take a honest look at things that have happened, right? I've heard anecdotal stories about Andrew's, sheep going astray. I read the CONSCOM minutes about it. I haven't seen the documents, anything that sort of documents that decision. just a discussion at the conscom minutes.
Yeah, there was a map.
Mhm.
Right, but there's no, it's not accessible, right?
So
So,
we can use that, right? Like, isn't that to me
I would look
is the same as an example, like to Alex's point, why like devil's in the details, like the contracts, the license details really matter, right? Because now conversely, where we could be in a similar situation where it's not clear or it's ambiguous or it wasn't documented how the land is going to be used going forward, and we don't want that either, right? So I think that the way, Brian, I think you characterize it as different camps, but I think the way I heard Alex describe it, I think they're very integrated. It's his is the details of the contract, clarity on that is really a subset of what would be the right process as you go through it as well. And I don't think of it as much as let's go back to dwell on the past. It's just like if we're filling in the steps, right? We're filling in all the steps, making sure all the boxes are checked, and if that ends up serving as a good template for next time, great. But right now, I think we are tasked specifically with Woodward, not just with saying, okay, well, we Woodward is done. Let's focus on a process for the future. I think that if we do this right, it could maybe set an example for how to assess use determinations in the future and how to make changes and how to involve the community input and do all the right things.
Right. And I want to say something too, because I was the chair during all this, okay? So one, we became an LOC with any kind of responsibilities in January of this year, all right? Judy had never been a chair before and had never really focused on being on a committee before, okay? Third, do you want to tell them about
I don't know what.
the, what is it called? Article
Oh,
97?
97, yeah.
So, or do you want me to say it?
Yeah, you can do it either, or Alex
Right.
maybe probably even knows about it. I think he's brought it up in terms of the bog before, but go ahead.
Right, so,
It's chapter 97.
okay, so I listened to the conscom meeting where Ryan came to discuss licenses, okay? And when he did, he specifically said property that was bought under chapter 97 is it's conservation land and it's to be managed by the Conservation Commission. He was just talking to the Conservation Commission. And he was saying, it's time for you guys to consider how best to utilize the land. Okay, like for instance, do you want to have more fees associated with licenses and that kind of thing? He said, but the most important thing is the contractor is not ever controlling what happens on the land. Okay, and the abutters are not part of controlling what happens on the land. So I listened to that. And so when we went forth, it never occurred to me, it really never occurred to me to talk to the farmer or the abutters when developing a plan that was so different and so benign, growing flowers and plants on an area that's part of a wildlife corridor and associated with great meadows and all of that. So so you can all point to me and say, Judy messed up here because it never occurred to her to say, hey, neighbors, are you going to be disturbed by anything that we've written? It never occurred
But
to
it
me.
didn't matter. So chapter 97 gives the town control over these properties. And we are not obligated to take in input from the, call them the stakeholders. You can just sit there and say, we decided to make it corn. We decided to, and there is no input based on the law. There may be input based on the town and morality and what everybody thinks, but there is no obligation. And additionally, town council came back because we heard people saying about the right to farm. The right to farm does not apply to town property. You have the right to farm on your property, But if you want to put a chemical on the town property and the town says, we don't want that chemical, you don't get to use the chemical. That's it.
Right.
There's no discussion. There's no right to
I'm
farm.
trying to,
I don't
I
think
feel like we're being
anybody's,
lectured to about
No, I'm just
things.
trying to
I
give the
just-
background.
Right, but that's not part of this discussion, right? Nobody's trying to, this is not a witch hunt. It's not trying to say that Judy did something wrong, or, we all voted as a committee, right? And we did our work, and so I think it's more, it's not just, I feel like you're on the defensive, right? And you shouldn't be, because we're just trying to make things right with the town.
But-
Here, we're not,
So that's why I'm trying to point out,
we don't
there's no
have to make,
obligation to make it right with the town.
yeah,
The,
and,
the board made a decision and they decided it would be not hay and grazing, but flowers, whatever. There's no obligation to do that. I mean, I'm not saying we shouldn't and we shouldn't have, but by the law, chapter 97 gives us the right to
this
change.
committee is reportable to the town. We are town servants
Right,
and volunteers. We're not here to make our own decisions. We're here to do what's best for the town. So, yeah, we have that prerogative, but the select board has a prerogative to dissolve us too, right? I mean, I think there's a difference between what we can do and what we should do, right? And I think trying to draw those lines is immaterial, really. We should include what we should do
I
and
don't
not
disagree.
get hung up on what we can do.
Okay.
But what we should do.
But-
and what we should have done.
I think what she's giving you is from not defensively, but from the history. Ryan came and made a passionate discussion, and if you don't have it, I can give you that clip. And said, you can do what you want. You can take it out of agriculture.
Understand, right? So what Ryan says is great advice, but it has no bearing on what our committee decides.
I totally disagree about that.
Well, Ryan doesn't run the committee. We don't report to Ryan. We report to the conscom through the select board, right? So we're an independent committee, and Ryan can't direct us to do things. And it's great to get his advice because he knows how the town runs. If we want to spend money, it's great to get his input on curing things and doing things the right way. But, if he's offering an opinion, that's just his opinion on what we should do, right?
I think one of the mistakes was the title of the new use, okay? So I knew the town liked agriculture. It had been here a long time. So we clarified that having a nursery or growing and restoring plants was agriculture. It's officially agriculture. So it would fit into the town's interest of agriculture. Okay, I believe the problem, especially with one of the butters, is the word nursery. Because when you think of nursery, you think of some of the real big nurseries with tables and, driving up and all kinds of stuff. So that was potentially a mistake. And so for the future of things, we want to really look at the language. And it never occurred to me to look at that language because I had the vision and I brought it to, okay. So that will be an important thing to consider if we're looking at any other properties. Or if we're making changes or anything, is wording. Okay, we still don't really know what the concerns are from the most vociferous of the abutters. Okay, because their concerns change all the time. Okay, or we don't really understand why they have some of the concerns. And so that's something that would be valuable. But even if they have these concerns, what we were told by conscom people directly to me, you listen, you thank them, and you're done. Okay, so Adam's shaking his head because he would prefer a more polite reaction, but I felt like I was told by Ryan in that meeting that this is how Conscom does it, so we chose to do it the same as Conscom would do it, which was just to make the decision. So that's how it got started, and it became an explosive thing. So I don't know how we're gonna fix the Woodward thing, and at the same time, make plans for future, you know, how we go about it. So that's,
Well, it's called chapter 97, right? We just be running, that thing by Bonnie and Margie and Lee and all those others who aren't exactly, exactly know what's going on with the way things, done lawfully to the town. Chapter 97.
So I look at it as that I don't think anybody's claimed or could claim what LSC did, was illegal in some sense. I think the purpose of having a subcommittee, or one of the purposes of having a subcommittee, is that the stakeholders not only have the opportunity
Can you hear him?
give input, but also that they are seen to have been given an opportunity for input. You could have every single one of them tell you, this was a terrible thing to do. But at the end of the day, you hear it and you either agree with them or you disagree with them. Disagree with them, you tell them why, and that's the decision. But you have to
Take
give
the input.
yes,
you have to give that process. And then, I think, like I said earlier, and I really do appreciate what you said, Judy, but there has to be a sort of fact-finding process to make sure that this contract and what the license holder is going to do is going to be, for want of a better word, good for the Woodward man. And so, and that may require, specificity from the life, maybe nothing more than they give us a management plan. We look at it and we say, that's great. Or it may be, we look at it and we say, well, that's great, but it doesn't take care of this problem or that problem.
Right.
And how should the LSC deal with that? And as I said, one thing that occurs to me is, the edges and the invasion of wonderful Oriental bittersweet that I've been fighting for 30 years. It's too big a job to be warranted by, the license, and maybe we need to be doing something supplemental to the license. I don't know the answers to these. These are just, the kinds of questions that occur to me as we go forward. So I do think we need to take a look at the substance, and we do need to give the process.
and see,
So if I can just say another thing in regard to process. So Alex and I have both been chairs of the Conscom. And compared to this, it's a walk in the park because it's, you have CMR, whatever, it's so black and white, pretty much. It's an RDA or an NOI, and these are the rules, and it's presented to us by a professional engineer who stamped something, not somebody who wants to do something. And it's not so laissez-faire as what we face here. And I think that's why we end up in these meetings with these, arguments over things that just wouldn't be an argument in Conscom. You meet our qualifications and we approve you, or you don't, and it almost never happened, but we reject you, and it's pretty almost like militaristic. It's very well defined. And LSC isn't well defined, so changing a property's use or doing something, can be a mess. And I just want to give a quick example of something new that hasn't come up yet. The Cub Scouts want to shoot off rockets at Foss Farm. And my understanding at this point is Duffy is saying, not in the fields I use. And the reason is, and I studied to be a veterinarian, it's called hardware disease. So the rockets are done with this nichrome wire, which burns when the rocket goes off. And it's like a stainless steel wire. And if the kids leave that in the field and he scoops that up in a crop and he gives it to his cows, he spends thousands and thousands of dollars on a vet trying to pull out this stuff. And if it's stainless, it doesn't show up, I guess, as well in an X-ray. So he's in a mess. So somebody might say, you know, that damn farmer, how can he tell us we can't, you know, how can we be mean to Cub Scouts, right? But he's just looking out for his cows. And, you know, we're giving these licenses on a yearly basis. And I think we need more to include the farmers and what's in it. You know, you might recall when Kay said she wanted to check the fairy rings at Fox Hill. I asked Andrew, who was on Zoom, you know, what do you think? It's his license. You know, I might borrow your car, but I want to know what you think, and do I need to fill it with gas? What's the deal? So
Yeah.
And I think that's something LSC just doesn't, we don't really manage that well.
Oh,
So-
we're just beginning.
Right.
Mine too, anyway.
With that.
Oh, go ahead. Are you, is that a raised?
No, whenever you're done, I want to just
Go
add
ahead.
a comment to it. I think add to it.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think I want to just add that because there's, I think in earlier there was a comment about, you know, no one would have thought that you know, that there would be so much pushback against this or concern. And I think it's important for this subcommittee at least, and probably the rest of the committee as well, hopefully, to recognize really that it isn't even necessarily about what it is about how. And that is really important when we go fast, like your example of the stainless steel. Like, how would people know unless they asked, right? Like, when you go fast, you make mistakes, you overlook problems, you overlook stakeholder input. At least personally, my concern all along wasn't about flowers or not. It was the caution that it felt like there might be problems, or there might be concern from others that wasn't able to get fully vetted, right? And the things that people now have issues with, like, I feel like we probably can overcome, like, these things could have been overcome if there was an ambiguity in what was actually going to happen, if there was a common discussion and understanding of what exactly is the scope, all the details of what's going to happen, if we understood concerns, like everything. Maybe I'm optimistic about it, but these things can be addressed. Like, if the LSC doesn't feel like we need to involve anyone, then that's going to push the community to speak up like they did, and that we could have seen 100 miles away. Any mention now that I hear about Article 97 or whatever it is just further exacerbates that. I think it'd be my strong opinion that would be the wrong way to go forward, because it's only going to go so far. Maybe we push the next four things that, you know, that we want to cross, and then somebody finally says, all right, enough is enough. We got to take this unchecked power away and start actually having some checks and balances here. At least that's the way I feel. And if you disagree with that, then think about 5 years from now or 10 years from now when someone else is in these seats, and if their opinions and views are different than yours, how would you want them to steamroll forward with something, even if it's a great cause, if it's something that they agree that they want to do, but you wouldn't want to see? Like, would you want someone else to have that same approach and say, I could do it because Ryan told me I can, or because Article 97 tells us we can, and not because the way we do things in Carlisle is we get community involvement, we make sure we can address the things, and we genuinely listen. Like, it might be good. It might be good, but it's the right way to do things versus the wrong way to do things.
So I hear you, and it makes me think of that, almost like the NOI process. Maybe LSC needs to come up, and that's probably not this subcommittee, it's another subcommittee, with a process, so that if we want to do something like that, we're, first of all, we're taking all the abutter input, as I say, maybe sending out green cards. We're taking everything in, and we have some process to discuss what we want to do with it. And the town might say, the best thing for this property is corn or sheep or whatever, or whatever. But we don't have that now. So, but I agree with what you're saying. We don't have that process. So I guess back to what we can do or what we can't do. Like, what do we want this subcommittee, and do we want it to just deal, as we agreed, narrowly with the scope of this license, or do we want to kick that back to the full committee? And do we want a different subcommittee that deals with the process of how LSC does things, which we're not, there isn't really a process. It's kind of a new child of CONSCOM after whatever it was, January. When it finally got approved by the select board. Otherwise, it was, well, you were on it. It was something different, I think.
So, if I can comment on that, I think, putting aside for the moment whether it's subcommittee or LSC, but I think in the context of Woodward, we can address all of those things. I think it would be good if we as a group said, we discuss this a lot, and we just want to clarify with LSC as a group that we intend to look at these subsidiary issues so that
expand the scope, basically.
Well, I don't know if it's expand, but certainly
clarify.
And my sense is, I don't think the full committee is practical, but that's just my.
No, if I had to come and appear, I'd much rather appear between the 6 of us than 11 people. It just doesn't, people either intimidated or it's probably hard to be angry at 6 of us than 12 of us. Right?
I don't know. I've been one and a half people.
So I'm looking at the audience on the chair that would be looking.
I mean, I worry going to the dump that people are hating me. That's what this has come down to.
No, well, I've seen that in other cases. I mean, it can be pretty.
And I told Judy, years ago, I was dating, and I was on a CONSCOM, and I'd go to a restaurant, and some people would be coming out, and they'd stop at the end of the table, and they'd say, "Oh yeah, you're Brian Murphy from the CONSCOM," and I'd say, "Yeah," and then they'd say, "Well, thank you for your service," and they'd walk out, and I'd say, "You never know if they're going to pay your bill or turn over your table. Like, you just don't know how people react."
Just as a very quick story, I was in Bedford, come out of a store, and some guy comes up to me and says, "You're on Carlisle CONSCOM, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah." "Did you have something wrong with us?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, I hope we treated you well." And there was silence, and then I realized he was the guy I had the police serve an enforcement order. So
Silence.
you never know.
No. So it would be good if we could be a kinder, gentler LSC, and we could pull together some protocols of, I don't know if we really can, because how many times are we going to change the use on property? Well, we could face the same thing, let's say, and it's not true, but let's say that, Duffy was hell-bent on atrazine, and we had discovered it had poisoned all the wells, right? Like, then what do? How do you tell the licensee they can't do the things the way they've always done them? There's a lot there that we'd have to sort of construct something for, but I bet other towns have already done this. We probably don't have to really start from scratch.
And also we have to look at timelines, okay? One reason that I think this felt so rushed is because it was demanded that we get the licenses out by early March. All right, so we didn't even look at Woodward because we had farmers that were in town that needed their licenses so they could start planning. And so we all focused on that. And then when it was done, then we started focusing on Woodward. But now we're worried about the beginning of the growing season. And let's move forward. So we should look at the whole year when we come to doing a sort of a protocol of how we address things and look at what's real, because what Conscom has done in the past is even though the farmers had a 3-year license, they review the license once a year. That's correct, right? That's what
Well,
Conscom
Sylvia
does.
signs it once a year.
Yeah, well, nothing changed over many years, so it was fairly pro forma. My
Yeah,
sense.
That's a whole nother story.
Yeah, no, I understand that.
And another issue with that is, and I don't mean to pick on Duffy, but he's the biggest one, biggest user. Farmers buy their corn now. They buy their corn in the fall. And it sounds like, he didn't admit it or not, but it sounds like he buys seeds that's treated with neonics. So if he bought his seed next week, when it's cheapest or whatever is best for him, and then he comes for his license in April and we say, no neonics, he's screwed. What's he gonna do with all that corn? And what's the spring price for corn? Probably a lot more, to try to scramble and find new corn that's not treated. We really need to try to work with these people and figure things out in advance. So they're not feeling rushed and shocked and screwed.
Mm.
Which is one reason I had recommended the 5-year grazing license. And all grazing licenses would be hay or grazing. Okay, because look at our weather this year. They all got first cut and that was it. Okay, everything else was burnt. You couldn't graze it, you couldn't
Hey,
hay it. Having 5 years, knowing you had 5 years to recoup or to plan for, I felt was a fairer deal. Okay, so, and that was trying to think like a farmer, just the way you're doing it, trying to think like a farmer. So that's when we go to AgCom and say, all right, work with us. What's critical time-wise, what's this and what's that? But going back to one of your questions is, we're land stewardship. We're not like, the make friends with the town committee, all right? Our focus is supposed to be best management practices of the lands that we're managing. And so some of the things that have been done in the past 25 years were not the best management practices. They're outdated. And so it's really scary for some people to hear LSC is thinking about doing things differently and how to do it. So I guess moving slower is Chris's most important message, moving slower.
so maybe we should go around the table and get what people think the message is and see if that relates to this potential subcommittee, which, we actually have the power tonight to form if we want to, because there's a quorum of the LSC. Or are there different things we need to do? I think I hear, I don't want to put words in Alex's mouth, but it sounds like you're saying, well, we could do this and we can we can deal with Woodward. We can also sort of nibble at the edges and come up with an idea. But do we need
I would go a little further than that.
to, not nibble?
No. I think the review of this contract and in the context of best management practices for the Woodward property, I think can cover a lot of those process issues as part of the recommendations. I do think it's would be good to go back to the full committee and say, look, to the extent that you were anticipating that this was a technical review of the contract to correct lines 2, 5, and 7, and that's not adequate to address, the issues that we've discussed tonight that need to be addressed in the context of Woodward.
Which doesn't, if I can add, it doesn't mean, we pause the life, it doesn't mean a lot of things a lot of people think. We pause the license, we kick them out, we whatever. We're just doing a process.
Yeah, no, I mean, the end result may be that we recommend to the full LSC that this is not gonna work out. I mean,
Yes, no, right, that's one extreme, and the other is no change, right?
the other is no change, the other is supplement. I mean, there's a whole range of things that we could look at, but I think given the language of the vote and certainly your interpretation that it was narrow scope, that I think it's important to go back to the full committee and say, we've discussed this and we think it's a little broader. We need to be a little broader than that.
I just had another thought, and I don't want to stop you from being in a circle, but I realized that it would have been great, maybe not this meeting, but a meeting like it, if we had the licensee, because, for example, when I met her in the field, the CR gives her the right to have a trailer of a certain size and a porta potty and a well. She may not want, so the neighbors are in arms over the porta potty. She may never want a porta potty. That's something the CR allows. And we put it out because it was out to bid. But
You mean the license agreement,
Yeah,
not the CR?
I'm sorry, the CR allows for a porta potty and a shed
But the license agreement has it as well.
because it's carried forward from but that doesn't mean the
But they
license.
want it.
No, at all.
Right.
But those are important things, because when you're talking to abutters, you're saying, well, that's out. Then the licensee doesn't care about it, it's gone.
Yes.
And so we've addressed that. And, the parking is the parking, and the driveway and the access is the driveway and whatever. So those issues you're right, may in fact be non-issues.
And Alex, being a lawyer, can tell you, not that the Woodward people would like this, but there's also a driveway that goes in, that abuts the property, that goes to the Woodward house that's there. And if you abut a driveway, a road, you have the right to use it, am I wrong? But,
You have to look at
but pretty much,
the actual.
yeah. But it could be that
Could be.
we could move the entrance, might infuriate the abutter.
No, I don't think that's fair.
Well, but and that's going to be the judgment of the LSC, but my point is, looking at the whole property, you might see things differently. Right? Like,
Yeah,
you
so
could say you abut and you have the right to the center line of that driveway. You might, I don't know.
but all that says is, I think the full committee needs to be made aware that the scope, as we see it, is more than just technical corrections.
Okay, so then one of the things before we leave this meeting, I don't know when the next full LSC meeting is, but we might decide to ask for a sooner LSC meeting and we have the right to do that as 6 of us. And it could be a short meeting, it could all be a Zoom meeting, but to change the scope of the subcommittee if we decide that's the right thing to have subcommittee, right?
We want to go around.
Yeah, and I'm sorry if
I agree with Alex on that. I agree with Alex that is the next step, and making sure it's broader, because that's the only way we can go through the whole process and get everything outlined. So
Thank you, I keep forgetting my job here.
There's a record.
Oh, you the secretary of this meeting?
Yeah.
Glad I got here late.
Are you next? You start to speak.
No.
You don't want to give any opinion?
Um,
We were kind of going around, so Alex said something.
I think if we, the subcommittee shouldn't be constrained on their recommendations to the bar committee, right? The scope should be past, present, future of Woodward. It shouldn't be editing the document or anything else. It's like, what was the past process, there's process issues. I think all those things, if you constrain the committee that's trying to address the problem, we got letters that said abolish the LSC. Select board, you should abolish LSC. That's kind of a big problem. And LSC is not going to be able to handle that letter that says you should kick them all out and pick new ones. So, my view is that a smaller group, and I think 6 is too big, to evaluate past, present, and future contract. There's specific things, there's general things, and limiting that scope, I think we'll get a better product, and honestly, if we come in with 6 recommendations and the committee rejects 2 of them, I mean, at least we went through the process. I don't have a problem with that.
But are you suggesting going in the past, meaning perhaps negating this license?
I'm not making any judgments on anything,
Okay,
right? If there were problems, how do we remedy those problems, right? It's not about my opinion. I don't think the subcommittee is going to be taking a lot of votes, binding votes. It's basically, we're going to come up with recommendations. We find problems. Is there a way to rectify that? Is there only a future, let's not do that again kind of thing, right? So it's either we have a remedy for that, or there's no remedy because we've made a commitment. And, it's a tough thing, right? I mean, we've got a commitment to somebody to do the land, and we have to sort of take that into account. But we also may have had, problems about how we did in the process. So it's not really about doing anything like that. I can't prejudge what the recommendations are. It's a job of that subcommittee to come up with recommendations. I can give you a list of problems, but I don't know all the solutions. Right? We heard a lot of feedback, and some of it's verbal at the select board meeting. I think some of it we've forgotten that we heard it, but we didn't register it. It doesn't get recorded in minutes or anything. I look back at some of that feedback. It's like, I think some of that would be a good starting list, basically, of how we rectify things. If we can, if we can't, we move on and try to do better in the future. But yeah, I think.
Well said.
It's gonna get more and more difficult to, so. The farmers and whatnot, they want farming period, these conservation lands and, all these rules and everything going towards no conventional farming, conservation land. But us, I'm really stuck on that big time because, we've wasted so much time with these people, all wildlife species are paying for it, as they die off. There's some butterflies and everything come up here and whatnot, so it's a situation. I still want to probably stick with, the whole just LSC to, take care of, this kind of thing. And
you mean the larger group?
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, because we've been at this for 5 months now. They know what is, we're all about, before most of us. So push on a bit more and see what happens here.
You didn't get a turn, Jenny, did you?
I'm open to either the subcommittee or the whole LSC. I think both choices have pros and cons. I think people like Alex and I, who have lived here for a long time, know that things have been done one way for like the last 40 years. I'm not quite sure that complaints based on that should rule, basically. I totally agree, however, in reviewing and trying to make the smoothest moving forward as possible. I think that's key.
That is.
Is it?
So my turn. I unfortunately disagree with Chris, not on doing a look back, but I think the first thing we need to do is figure out if this license is flawed and how to fix it. And that's what we were tasked with, right? Is to review the license, review the support materials, make a recommendation. I think we need to set I don't know who's been talking to the licensee, but they know there's stuff going on, and I've said nothing. I think we need to figure that out, see their management plan, and move this forward. And I think it's a different task, more on the lines of what Adam was saying before of, we could do a look back and we can get into all this stuff, but I don't think we need to move them forward with their license. And I know this pressure, I keep hearing from the abutters, cancel the license, and even the abutters that contacted me this week, why isn't Andrew there? They want Andrew there. We signed a 5-year license with somebody. It's not their fault. We advertise this license and people, I don't know, bid isn't the right word, but people applied and were interviewed for it. And the fact that LSC made mistakes of how they did things, I think that's a different matter than the simple, clear matter of whatever's wrong with the license. We need to take in stakeholder input, figure out what's wrong here, and adjust for it, and present that back to the licensee. And again, some of it, they don't want a porta potty, or maybe they don't want a well, they don't want all this stuff that's in opposition. It may not be that big a deal, but it doesn't destroy the license and turn it back to other kinds of agriculture. And I think that's what happens when you open it up
The question.
too big, too wide. So I see sort of two different subcommittees. One is to do what we were tasked to do, or maybe we give that back to the LSC. And maybe the subcommittee is following, I don't have it in front of me, but Adam wrote a little document, and it was perfect of what we should be doing. To really look at everything and talk about this and make a procedure and apply that procedure to future licenses. But I don't think dragging back into the history is gonna resolve this. It's just gonna take more time. So that's just my opinion. So I don't know how we best, it's 8:30, how we best move forward. I think I heard from Alex, you're saying we should go back to the LSC and tell them what we think.
Yeah, so if there's a consensus, I'm not sure I heard one, but if there is a consensus that the subcommittee is the better way to go, then we can go back to LSC and say, we've agreed, and despite potential recommendations from our end, the subcommittee is the best way to go. if we don't have a consensus on the scope, maybe that should go back to LSC for
Clarification.
clarification and decision. And, but otherwise, I mean, the rest of what you put on the agenda, I think is spot on.
Mhm.
You mean your German part?
No. Identifying stakeholders, fact finding, I mean, all that kind of stuff. I think is
Mhm.
in the
I mean, should we preemptively do that now before we even?
Well,
Should we finish the agenda or do we want to go bouncing
no,
back?
I think, well, personally, I think the scope is really gonna be decided at the beginning here.
So my question is, should we be going back to them and telling them what we want for a scope?
Well, if we have a consensus on that, sure. If we don't have a consensus, going back to them, asking them, telling them what the different viewpoints are, and asking them for clarification.
So do you think we can reach consensus? I mean, it's not that I don't want to hear the reach back in the past. I just don't think we signed a contract. So what Judy did 10 years ago with sheep on there, I don't really care about.
No, yeah, so maybe we're just talking about semantics here, but
That's what I'm wondering.
yeah, I'm not interested in going back and seeing what other people did in the past. For me, I'm much more interested in looking at the condition of land presently and what best practices and if we go forward with the idea that we're taking input from the stakeholders, whether we end up agreeing with it or not is a different matter, but we're going to take it. But I think very early on in this process, we should meet with the license holders.
Yeah, it's a good cleanup.
Well, it could take a lot of issues off the table. But I think that's really important. Like I said, I just want to be sure that the whole committee understands we're not sitting there and going, oh, there's a typo in line 6. Fix that, because I don't think that kind of a review solves the problems that the committee has, which is broad terms of public confidence. And I don't think it addresses making sure that we're taking care of the property as it should be.
So I can say one
Yeah.
thing, Heather,
Sorry.
Native, and that is, they are a group that's nonprofit, and they rely entirely on raising money to do stuff. And they're in the process of raising funds for the next steps of this project. Okay. And she, I believe, if I remember
She asked
correctly,
us for money, did she?
no, but I think she asked you from something you said in the past. Should I even bother?
Well, I think that's having a meeting, a public meeting with them to go over these issues. It serves also the function of educating, stakeholders. This isn't just, pie in the sky. We have competent people with competent ideas who are going to do a good job. I mean, that would be great. That would help tremendously.
Having the crew that tend to come over here along the wall.
They're going to come. Okay.
But that's why I didn't, she said, Native, oh, let's meet with the neighbors. And I said, I don't think so at this point. Because,
No, at some point.
but she was willing to like meet them in the field and talk about it. And maybe that would have solved 80% of it, but maybe it wouldn't have because she doesn't like where I park. I don't know what to do. So I shielded her, and the reason I went the day they did the invasives is I was concerned there could be an altercation between the abutters and the licensee. And part of it is curiousness and part of it is just total confusion. Apparently one of the reasons the town bought the land is they wanted to take down all the trees on the edge of Maple Street, which I had no idea. I didn't live here at the time. So Sylvia actually took this document and redlined it. And she said, that they can't remove, the licensee cannot remove all those trees until, because it's a scenic vista, until the town approves it. They have no thought or desire, they'd like to cut the bittersweet off of it, but they have no thought or desire to cut down all those trees. And it's, I wouldn't even say it's in their license, it's on the other side of the wall, it's outside of the field, most of it. But they got all riled up about that, the abutters, of course they would, why would you take down all those trees? It isn't even, it's not in the license, it's not even on the list.
Well,
But-
so, again, it's a
Hmm.
lot of misinformation and misconceptions floating out there. Need the process.
So maybe we almost need to ask them for their management plan in advance of any next meeting, so we have a better understanding of what it is they want to do.
And I believe they should have that now because they put it out for, getting funding.
What,
Native has put out,
you put out a management plan and say, can you guys fund this? So it happens, okay, I don't know.
because they have quite the, the community, Audubon and places like that. They have people that donate.
Okay,
This is a big group.
So if the plan is out there, I mean, I think that it's even more urgent, I think, for us to get it. And our job is, as much as anything else, in addition to fact finding, our job is also probably to be facilitators of some of these conversations and help encourage the transparency of here's what's really proposed to happen, and these are what the concerns are, and here's how we can help try to mediate, as best we can. Now, I'm partially always, the optimist, and I feel like, or I reserve hope that we can resolve all this in a way that everyone ends up figuring out, okay, like this can be amicable. But I also think that, and I don't want to have my words misinterpreted. I think just because I want to go through the process, I do think that saying up front that there's any restrictions on certain things, and even approaching in the meetings and saying, look, no matter what, we're not going to do X or Y, or we're going to do X or Y, is just the wrong setup. I think that we should go in and know that, look, like, we don't know what we'll discover. We don't know what we hope that we can overcome most of the issues and address most of the real issues. There's a chance that we may not be able to address issues, and then we'll have to address that head on. It may be viewed as one extreme one way or one extreme another way, but that chance exists. And I think that's the only way you can actually go into it feeling like, or having the stakeholders feel like they're going to be heard and they're going to be understood. So and that's the only way I frankly feel like it's not a waste of time too. I think we, if it's just going through a technical contract, then yeah, technical contract, we not sure that's really worth the time we're going to be spending. I think we want to assess everything and try to figure out how can we really help the situation? How can we really try to set a good example for what should be done?
so I'd like you to clarify, my thing is sort of the look back, how far back, how far do we want to look at it?
I don't think it's a look back. Yeah, then I think it's language. This is semantics. Totally. It's not a. I don't want to do a look back. I just want to start the process from, square one to say, all right, here's the situation, like what we have, or what we had is a desire to change this use. What clarity do we need about how that's going to be used by Grow Native? What What do they want to do? What are all the questions that they maybe haven't answered that Alex didn't see in the contract, in the license? Then based on that clarity, like visuals and descriptions and what we're doing, based on that, let's share that with the other stakeholders and talk to the stakeholders and say, what, like, where do you have issues with some of these? What other questions do you have or concerns about what you have? And then that's how we start to unpack where do we have hurdles that we can address or can't address.
Okay. And the other thing I realized in all this is that, and I don't know how much you looked at it, but we have things in there like, in the lease, or license, dogs must be on a leash or only 2 parking of cars. They can't control that. That's on us. If there's we need to put up a sign that says dogs must be on a leash, and it's up to LSC if the dogs were running all over their flowers and destroying them, that's our problem, right? Or if 10 people want to park their cars in there, that's not her job isn't to sit there and police the property.
Yeah. I mean, there's going to be other stakeholders, and we got to factor this stuff in. There's supposed to be a trail through that property, right? And we have to get, so what are the views on how the trail is going to be and how that's going to be managed? And is that going to be impacted by the license holder? Is that a restriction that the license holder needs to abide by? So
Yeah,
ambiguity invites a lot of, potential trouble.
Okay.
Just some of the issues with the contract are just product of using a form that really A, outdated, and B, mostly not applicable to this project. I mean, that is a separate issue. So, all of that I think needs to be revamped at some point.
There's one other thing I think that we need to put into this because it might possibly explain some of the concern of the abutters, okay? And that is that Sam and Sue and Robert Charles, or Charles Robert, I can't remember, Mr. Robert, and his wife live alongside a driveway that in the most recent review of property lines, it shows that a good part of the land that they thought either they owned or they were really close to is now owned by the town.
But they have a driveway easement,
Right.
but they encroach. They have electric utilities over and they have, and I think the septic system for one of the houses is like, it wouldn't be allowed, but
Right,
it's
so
there.
they're worried, okay? And so it would be valuable to get that going, and despite nagging, both Ryan and I have not been able to get the town to answer who should require Sam C. and McNary to draw a final map. I mean, right now, we don't have a final
We
map.
don't have a
showing
plot
any-
plan for lot 3, so we don't really have a CR because we don't.
They can't do the CR. So, I mean,
We just got bounds put in. We finally got it surveyed, but.
Yeah.
But there's no final plot plan and, you weren't here yet, but LSC paid half the bill which is constant, right? Paid half the bill to get the bounds determined because.
right.
And I'm on track and it's awful. You go somewhere and I don't know where.
Right, but it means that these people are concerned, okay, which heightens their nervousness about anything that's being done in there. And how much does that play or come into play? And,
Well, as I remember the configuration with the driveway and the Pietro Paolo's, it leads at least to potential concern that it will feel like somebody's parking in my driveway, or it will feel like somebody's parking in my backyard.
Right,
Right.
right. And you can line up cars along that. It's town property. So maybe we need a no parking sign. We could make that
Some
decision.
constraints, yeah.
yeah,
So, a lot of issues.
So I hear some consensus. I just want to go back to you. we're more
Well-
interested in looking at the past. Do you want?
We're trying to solve problems here, we're kind of discussing some of the things that are issues, right? The boundary is certainly an issue. And it's not in that narrow scope, right? But I think a small subcommittee could do a little more work on the boundary issue than the full committee trying to debate what to do about the boundary, right?
Well, there's nothing to do about the boundary.
Well, I mean,
It's town land.
again, we're trying to solve the problem, not like identify and look at solutions, right? Or, come up with a recommendation. The idea of, like the whole brainstorming session, right? If you ever had brainstorming lesson, right? You just put the things out there and you don't follow it with the commentary about this is why, right? These are the issues. And then you sort of tackle them in a try not to be judgmental, try not to bring your own personal thoughts into it and say, and I think if we don't look back, we'll never satisfy the folks who are complaining the most. Right? I think,
Well, I hear you, but I think if we look back too much, we'll never satisfy anybody because it's just gonna open the can. I think this license is separate, as I said before, than doing a full look
but
back.
how did we get to the license, right? We got to the license with a vote on the LSC. What was the vote for? And what were the documents? You say the supporting documents. Well, the supporting documents were all those things that we did before we got to the vote on the final license, right? And so I don't know how you can say you're going to look at the license, but not look at how we got in the supporting documents without looking at the old minutes, things that we voted on, and documents that support that. I mean, they were.
I think that's where I disagree. I think you're turning it into a 6-month project. And I think we were hoping to have a few meetings, which I think Alice is overly optimistic. And resolve it as quickly
If
and
you want
reasonably.
line
as we can.
item the thing, that's fine.
But I
don't
hear
think
you
that's the
saying
way-
you wanna go back and hit, so you wanna bring Andrew in and talk
I
about.
don't support the
See,
idea that we look at the license and cross out the mistakes or things that are people object to. I think that's not the purpose of,
Well, that was the vote.
I understand, but, the advice we got is, why don't you form a subcommittee to tackle some of these things? And the subcommittee is gonna make recommendations. We're not gonna make any binding votes for the LSC. So I think it feels tonight like there's a big defense that's being mounted here against the decisions. And that's not the purpose of the subcommittee, is to try to change the decisions.
But you are the decision was to review these documents. And
I'm
you're
talking
saying,
about,
I don't agree with that. I wanna do a look back.
well,
The look back,
so we're talking about the scope, right?
Chris, when you say look back, and correct me, maybe we're on the same page here. Do you say, look, I don't want to just look at the documents in a vacuum. I want to look at the documents, understanding, like first hearing one-to-one from the abutters and how they view this. I want to hear from the new potential license holder, what they're going to do and understand all this. Like, there's no. Are you saying let's not just look at the existing document, but let's understand really all the details that may have kind of slipped through the cracks over the last whatever it's been. I don't know, 6 months, 12 years. I don't know at this point, but
I mean, we've heard from the abutters multiple times.
because that I agree with. I think there should be a full like that's part of I think the task of the subcommittee is to say like have we really understood and can we help break down the real issues and understand them, because we can't recommend in good faith and good conscience like recommend changes without really going back and getting more details first.
but there's going back and there's going back. You wanna go back? I don't mind going back to all these people and hearing what they have to say.
Yeah.
I'm more concerned with a look back of a whole review of how this all happened and, we're not the Warren
No,
Commission.
no, it doesn't matter how it doesn't matter how, look, how we got here is how we got here. I think when you get a chance when you get a chance to do it, it's like, how would you do it anyway? How would you do it a second time? And like, was there any gaps? So,
I think that's not in our purview. We'd have to go back to LSC and see if they want to change that then. I don't think that's our purview for this. That's why I hear two different things. One is, and I'm not saying rubber stamp this. One is to correct the document, and another might be to create a template for the future, which is obviously based on the past of how we're doing this stuff and how we're treating ag or butters or anybody else, and how we change the rules. As I said, maybe we send out certified notices to all the abutters of a property if we're going to change something, right? That may be important. Let's take toll. There are people who have little mowed trails where they go onto the property that probably aren't legal. If we wanted to have a meeting and talk about those, we should invite all those abutters and see what's going on. And maybe the answer is the town should mow those little trails and they should have the access. But right now they're not, technically allowed. I'm just making another example of.
yeah, but my statement wasn't Chris, it was a question for you, right? It wasn't an argument of what we should do. More so, Chris, is that what you mean also to say, like, and look back?
The look back is, like I said, and I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, but we need to look at how we got here. Because one of the arguments is this is the fruit of the poison tree, right? You didn't follow a good process. So how can you, you got to null and void this because it's the fruit of the poison tree. And so that's not, I think that should be addressed. I don't think we throw it out because it's the fruit of the poison tree. I'm not advocating that's a position, but that's the feedback we got at meetings. We got feedback that there's no process when you change land use. I think that's true. We don't have a process when we change land use, right? That was feedback from a committee, right? There's some things we won't be able to address, right? But I think there's opportunities, if we find things to correct them for the future. That's what I mean past. What mistakes did we make? If there are remedies here, like removing the porta potties, for instance, that would be a remedy because we didn't listen to the porta potty, thing, right? That might be a recommendation, for instance.
But that's in the CR. That's a legal right.
Doesn't matter. We're trying to do what's right. We're not trying to do what we can do. It's not about what we can do, right? It's about what we should be doing. And as committee representing the town, I just don't think, looking at how we, laying out what we did, identifying mistakes, if there's recommendations for the future, the productive ones, I'm not trying to, I don't think we're not trying to prosecute something here. We're trying to say, when we go forward, let's do it better. Let's don't do it this way. Let's do it this way. And if there's something there that we can correct, let's correct it. So,
But that's beyond, again, it's beyond the scope of what we're being.
I know, like I said, I understand this, but that's what we're talking about is the scope. And the question on the table is, do we expand the scope or do we keep it narrow? And I think we should expand the scope and try not to constrain the subcommittee with their they're gonna come with recommendations. We don't know we can't say what they're going to be now. And we're trying to do it all now as part of that, but I think the discussion here is, do we expand the scope and look for things we may have done wrong? If we can remedy them, fine. If we can't, fine. Look at the document, the current document, fix what we can fix. in the future, how are we gonna monitor that? How are we gonna do things in the future? So that's my past, present, future thing. It's not a prosecution. It's just to look back to try to do things better. I mean, I've never been on a town committee. That was January is when I started. That's when all the problems started. So I feel like they're all my fault.
Maybe
So it's getting late. I feel like that's appropriate, but what do we need to do to decide, is that the recommendation or not as a subcommittee? I guess we're
Well,
not.
we're not
in
even
a subcommittee yet.
subcommittee yet, so I think we have to go back to the LSC and decide if they want to expand the scope. And I think there'll be different, I mean, everything, I think everything Chris is saying is valuable. And everything you were saying is valuable, and Alex actually also thought, had some things about inviting the community and making sure, those are all really valuable, but they may not, that isn't what we were asked to do right here. And I think we need to solve this, but, on the alternative, maybe Chris is right, that if we go through and change 8 lines in this based on meeting with the abutters and everything, they may not be happy. But so we can't change the past. And I don't think we're not tasked right now to be a wider scope fact-finding group to do that. I think that's really valuable and we should do that, but that's not this subcommittee. Even if we don't need a subcommittee. I mean, maybe this just goes back to the full LSC and there's a subcommittee to talk about how we improve our processes in the future. I don't know.
I mean, it does
I think
include.
there's an opportunity to do all of that in the context of the concrete example of Woodward.
Okay,
So,
because you need something to go by to do it.
yeah, I mean, we can all canoodle lots of things. But we have a concrete example and a problem to solve.
Right.
And so if I were to boil it down to the words that I think have been most impactful on me, is we don't want to constrain the ability of the committee to make recommendations related to the Woodward contract. Just want to be able to look at it, look at all the facts, look at all the issues, and be able to deal with this, right, once and for all.
So one of the other issues, the once and for all starts to go away. If we significantly change this, we probably have to re-advertise it and put it back up to bid. Because it's a contract we've signed.
Well, that's beyond my human.
Well,
Maybe that's one of the recommendations, I guess, but if you don't do this review and address the issues head on, whatever they are, you got to address. You don't have to agree with, but you got to address.
okay.
And people got to feel like they were heard. And if we come in and do it, like my nightmare is we're sitting here and, AgCom or somebody says, well, you ought to terminate the license and throw these people out. And I don't want the answer to be, yeah, but we're not authorized to do that by the LSC. I mean, if that's the answer, you've accomplished nothing. If the answer is, we hear you, can you explain why you think the license should be canceled? What's wrong with it? Blah, blah, blah. You hear all that, and then you can say, well, subcommittee, consider this. We really
We
think
take it under advisement.
it's a good idea. No, but more, I mean, in concept, right, in principle, it's a great idea, right? I mean, why is it shouldn't be objectionable that the LSC has made a decision that we're going to use the Woodward property for the purpose of propagating native species. That's in principle, it's a great idea. Whether the Woodward property, in fact, is, useful for that purpose, or whether it's useful, but we also have to deal with other things at the same time. Those are a whole bunch of different issues, but I don't come in here and I say, oh, no, that's a terrible idea. Clearly, in principle, it's not a bad idea, right? So, but we got to be able as a subcommittee to hear all that input and not be saying to people, we're not going to listen to you because that's outside our scope.
Right, it just piss people off.
Piss people off, and it doesn't accomplish purposes. So,
And my only reason not to go back too far is I'm afraid it's gonna take, a long time.
Yeah.
It's not that what you're saying isn't valid, but oh my God, like how, we're gonna have 2 meetings a month and do this for 6 months? The subcommittee? I would rather not do that. I think it's the mountain out of the molehill. But also, I absolutely agree with Alex. If we don't do some of that now, we'll never do it because you need a live model to work on. And just doing it theoretically with nothing to base it on probably isn't gonna accomplish much. But anyway, so I guess we're gonna go back to LSC. I know you wanna go, so we all wanna go. We're gonna have to go back to the larger group, talk about expanding the scope. I don't know what we wanna do about the number of members. Well, supposedly we couldn't have 6 members, but then it sounded like from what I read you that Ryan said, he's like, he didn't care. LSC subcommittee could be 3, 5, or 6. That's how many spots you haven't appointed. But I don't know what happens, because that's a quorum. And actually, I think I'll send you guys this document, but I think Ashley said, that's when she started saying we had to evict somebody. And I don't like to be evicted. I don't know anybody else. So I don't know what we would do about it. Committee can decide how to choose 5, interview and decide who's best qualified, or see if someone's willing to withdraw consideration. So I don't know what we do about that. Or maybe this subcommittee, as I had argued with Barney, this subcommittee is also legally a quorum of the LSC, and so what? Does it really matter? Like, does it cause any harm?
I didn't
We just have to-
understand. And I don't, with the greatest respect to Ashley, I'm not sure that she
Is right?
is right that somebody has to be evicted. But
Yeah.
if that's the case, we'll
Draw straws?
draw straws or throw something up in the air and see how it falls out. But I think
All right, so maybe I should go back and try to resolve the quorum issue. And then we'll go to LSC, and you're taking notes, right?
somebody told
It's
me it's
taking
recorded.
notes.
Can I get like a transcript of it?
Yeah,
Okay,
you can.
somebody will tell me
That's
how to
what
do
Claudia
that.
does. She takes good notes, but
Okay, well, I keep forgetting because.
Just the
But I couldn't get the transcript from the last meeting, from Tuesday's meeting.
it's not you have to listen to it.
I did, but another meeting we did, it gave like a whole written thing and then an AI summary of the meeting, some of which was wrong, the time Megan came. It said Megan's the latest LSC member.
There's one we didn't record.
That's the first one, yeah.
Alex, could we ask you to, the way you just described, what we would, the reason for asking for the scope expansion, could you word that again, I think, as well as you just did to position that for LSC?
I think it's recorded.
I
Okay.
think, yeah, I think you just summarized, the case for why it really has to happen, for us to really address this issue head on, I think was a strong one, so.
I can get the transcript from the recording and give it to you guys. It might not say Alex is speaking because it doesn't know voices sometimes, but it will have all the text. But again, it's prone to some level of hallucination, so
Every now and then.
Boss Farm always became Boss Farm.
Recording going.
Yeah.
This is a recording. You can watch the meeting.
You could, yeah. I haven't finished watching the last
You
one.
just listen to.
But while you're watching it, it gives you the text. It's sort of like closed caption.
All right.
Okay, anything else then with that, or, because I really have to sign off?
So that's the decision. We're going back to full committee to talk about the scope, and you're gonna clarify with town as to whether we have to evict somebody or not.
Yeah, so I hope nobody gets an eviction notice. All right. So,
Move to adjourn?
yeah, what else was on there? Next meeting. Oh,
Oh, next meeting?
I don't
We
think
don't
we can
know.
pick next meeting yet.
but in terms of next meeting, when does the LSC meet again? Did you guys?
14th of October.
Do we want to ask for a special meeting of the LSC to deal just with us before then, which could just be Zoom? But we don't have the authority. We as a quorum have the authority to set another LSC meeting. But unfortunately, we don't have the full LSC to agree with us.
Right.
So I don't know we just wait till the 14th. I mean, I guess there's no more harm. I mean, it annoys the abutters, but nobody's putting out a porta potty or drilling a well or anything right now. And hopefully we'll have their plan.
Maybe you can ask them for that
I
plan.
will.
I
That's
mean,
on my notes.
Yeah, we should get some words of encouragement to them so that, they know that they can stay.
Yeah, because somebody's giving them negative feedback, because I could tell by the letter she sent me. I don't
Let's
remember
get
that.
some negative feedback.
The licensee.
somebody interfering.
I don't know if they're interfering, but
Well,
sounded
everybody
like
has
that.
their
She may have just gone and watched all the Zooms.
God help her. All right, so I had these, does anybody want these copies of the? I'm sorry for the highlighter, I only had the copy I started to edit. It doesn't, you can ignore my
Thank you.
marks. Adam, I think I sent these online, but
The ones that you sent, I have them all, the documents you sent by email.
okay,
Thank you.
I need somebody else. Oh, no, I need the Boy Scout thing.
I mean, yes.
You need one more.
Fine.
Adam, can you reach through the screen and sign this for me?
We can get electronics.
The Boy Scout
We can
license.
get an
Did
electronic.
I sign it?
Huh?
Did I sign it?
Yeah, Judy,
Okay.
Judith. Like, we'll find somebody else to sign it, I guess.
Somebody you could email a PDF to them, and they could send it back to you electronically signed.
Okay,
Would be just fine.
so can I do that with you? This is just the Boy Scout license to camp on there, and I wasn't in the last meeting, but we're not gonna let Judy and I go out and pick their spot. Because I don't think they're gonna come, they're in Holden, I don't think he's ever gonna come and look at it. He just wants to be told what to do, he's not really choosy.
Yeah, we're gonna, I think we discussed, we're gonna designate a spot on a map and just show them where, right?
And again, I
Yeah,
don't know what you decided, but
If
I
you
would,
send it, I'll sign it.
right, I would push them to
Do you,
put their canoes in on the Bedford side, not to try to muck them Duffy's Field or anything else.
Yeah, it's dangerous.
You just put manure on it, So,
Doesn't it just need 2 signatures?
No, because it's more than 6 people.
Oh,
It
An
needs-
evening.
And, oh, an evening, yeah. So. There's somebody else. So can I get a motion to adjourn?
motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, so it's moved and seconded. I think we can just all say aye, right?
I,
Aye. Aye, bye.
Bye.
See you.
Okay.
Yeah. Look at that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I think it will be you.
In other news.
Yeah.
At the bog with, Suki and Melissa today, and we were clearing the crown of the bog. And, it's in worse shape than I thought.
Pretty Swiss cheesy.
Yeah, so I think I brought pictures, you weren't there, Brian, but I brought pictures at the last meeting, I thought, what? This because they stuck the pipe in straight. And today I stuck the pipe in and I said, well, if I were the animal making a burrow, I would have the entrance underground and then I would go out. And so I tipped the pipe up a little bit. It went up to my shoulders. It went all the way in.
And do you think it's muskrats or you think it's beavers? What's the diameter?
There's big ones, there's small ones, there's about 4 or 5 that are.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm gonna stop this recording.
but as a matter of process,